Okay, so let me move on. Life was carrying on nicely until in Jan '07, with a nudge from John Kay, we did an in-depth forensic investigation of the British mortgage market, right? British mortgage market was going great guns in Jan '07, and John said this is not making sense. So we got into a car, drove around the country. Drove around England and Scotland, and we wrote this note on 7th January 2007. A note which became sort of legendary in the UK, called Risk Amplifiers on Full Volume, saying this country will blow up. 7 Jan '07, we wrote a 30-pager saying this country is going to blow up because low quality mortgage lending is being done. The banks' balance sheets are going to blow up. You should, if you are investing in these stocks, you should get the hell out of here, right? And in a way, all of you know what happened in the subsequent 18 months. From Feb '07, we wrote this note. Lehman happened September '08, right? So we were 18 months early. By the time summer '07 came in, when, say, Rakshit, myself, and the financials team used to speak about this subject, British people used to fight to get a seat in the room, right? Because their point was, in logo ko kuch sach pata hai, the Clear Capital team have figured out something that if we don't hear in this very meeting, then kal subah sunenge to duniya tabah ho jayegi. At one level, they were right. But at another level, unfortunately for them, even by summer '07, gaadi nikal chuki thi, damage was already underway, right? So this note, Risk Amplifiers and Full Volume, and the subsequent iterations ultimately led to us getting our clients out. Jan '08, iske ek saal baad, we started looking for a buyer for the firm because we knew, although we were profitable, we knew the world was heading for a full-fledged meltdown, right? Now, why am I highlighting this? That when we make a call about what the state of a country is, we do so with a lot of thought. So if I go back again to March 2020, right? March 2020, when we did a conference call with our then modest client base, when we said in our newsletter and in our TV appearances that this is a massive buying opportunity. Again, that this sort of detailed research goes behind it. When we see a structural blow up like this, we flag it, and vice versa. Those of you who are reading our newsletters and blogs would have heard from my various colleagues that we see the next 5 years as being enormously profitable and productive for India. So we sold this company. We migrated to India, the airport just outside this hotel. I remember 12th May 2008, my wife and I landed with our 6-month-old son. Now, one of the reasons we migrated to India after selling the company was we did some very basic mathematics. As I said, my son was 6 months old then. And we said that assume India just grows at 6%, just 6% real GDP. 25 years hence, we realized the boy would enter the job market. If you did 6% compounding on India for 25 years, you realize that by 2032, this would be the world's third largest economy. By the way, now it's highly likely will be the world's third largest economy well before 2032. But you're making a call on your life, you better have margin of safety, right? So I turned to my better half and said that, dekho, we have a choice in life. We can raise the bacha, and subsequently we had a daughter as well. We can raise the kids either in the Western Hemisphere, in which case they'll have a happy life, but they'll not be able to participate in the world's third largest economy. Or you raise the bachas in the world's third largest economy, and when they grow up, they can make a choice. If they really want to live abroad, like a lot of Indians do, wo aasan hai. It's not very difficult to move to Singapore, Dubai, London, New York, etc. That's, you just have to buy a ticket and go there, right? Itna labor shortage hai, they'll take you. But if you grow up there, it's super tough. Right? You grow up there, just imagine, right? Working in Chakala, you've grown up in London, working in Chakala, right? Ab traffic jam mein rote baith jaoge. So the pitch worked. We rocked up here, right? And we started reading Indian annual reports, right? Now, this links directly to what's happening in the portfolio right now. And after around 3-4 months of sitting in Powai and reading annual reports, we said, yeah, these books don't make any sense. These are large companies. They're supposed to be making money. They show profits, but cash flow nahi hai. Koi free cash flow nahi hai. Through very complicated subterfuges, they're making the cash disappear, right? That's when Ashwin Shetty joined us, 2009, Ashwin, right? He joined us from the Big Four. And that's when we realized that the Indian chartered accountant is a superman, right? And we went long, heavy long. Abhi bhi super heavy long hai hum. on the Indian Chartered Accountant, because the Indian Chartered Accountant, right, is really well trained. It's a very rigorous exam. Unfortunately, I'm not an Indian CA, but we have 16 such supermen in our office, supermen and women in our office. And we realized that all we need to do is learn from them chori kaise hota hai in India mein, right? And if you guys, you should ask your relevant Marcellus contact to organize a session with our forensic team on आपका पैसा, मेरा पैसा, मेरे parents का पैसा इंडिया में चोरी कैसे होता है. So the book that we learned from a lot from this book called Financial Shenanigans. This is the old version. I think नया version आ चुका है. I think 4th या 5th edition आ चुका है. Incredible book on accounting fraud. Anybody in this audience who wants to understand the world over, this book explains chori in USA, UK, Japan. But you know, as you can understand, there's no promised land right now. As we were doing this, right, we were meeting corrupt promoters. Every week we would choose one corrupt promoter to meet and we would discuss how he was stealing money. In November 2010, Vinod Rai ji published, he went live on TV. Vinod Rai ji went live on TV on a weekday at 4 p.m., November 2010, right? And we was just 2 years into our stay in India. And we watched that entire live telecast. On the 2G report that Vinod Rai ji published. So he put it on the website and we downloaded it. You can still go and download it, hyperlink given hai. And I'm sorry we haven't highlighted it. It's really small font. Let me see if I can highlight it here. What Vinod Rai ji said is basically $20 billion, ye jo number hai, $20 billion has been stolen from the country, right? So we read the report and we said, Arey, these companies to we know. These are the same companies who fail our forensics. Right? So we went to Delhi and we met him. And he said, can you help us? Can you train the Comptroller and Auditor General's team in accounting fraud? So we went to Shimla to do a training course for the CAGs, because just like any other branch of the Indian Civil Service, every year नए लोग join करते हैं. And then subsequent years, we now also train the fresh incoming group of Indian Police Service के जो officers. Every year, India brings in 250 police officers. The National Police Academy is in Hyderabad. So every year we do a course for them as well on this subject, right? And as we were doing all this, we were learning fraud, we were learning how the country gets shortchanged, you and I get shortchanged. We were continuing to meet these sorts of companies. So let's choose one promote since, in the interest of time, since these guys were next door only. This was a memorable meeting from 2010, where we rocked up inside their office and Pramod again did his magic.
No, again, it was one of the basic questions around accounting standards. When if you have a company and you sell your product to your own subsidiary, you're supposed to book profits in one and cancel out as expenses in the other. Surprisingly, this company wasn't following it, and we pointed that out, to which obviously the management wasn't too happy. Whenever the management reacts very adversely, you know you've touched a raw nerve. In that case, you're in the right direction, which is what we ended up doing. We ended up publishing the note, and I guess literally soon after, within a few months, the whole scandal broke out. You know what happened to Financial Technologies, what happened to the promoters there. But yeah, I mean, thanks to Shillett using these techniques to uncover these accounting shenanigans, you could stay away. Or at least that time we were advising clients. We advised clients to stay away. The stock lost a lot of money. Had you been invested, you would have lost a lot of money. At least those who could follow our advice could stop themselves from seeing their portfolio getting eroded.
So these years, right, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, whilst they were exciting us, we were learning a lot. We were figuring out that ye jail jayega, and then we would realize 3 saal baad ye jail gaya. These guys were also politically very powerful. Some of them are still going to jail, by the way. One dude went to jail 2 weeks ago. He should have gone to jail 6 years ago, but anyway, he went to jail 2 weeks ago. And this story continues, right? You know, if you think about it, agar USA, Japan, right? You saw what happened in FTX. If countries like USA, Japan, China haven't got to the bottom of it, it's also a journey for us. But the learning here is in no circumstances should you invest in such companies. These names are gone. Naam badal gaye hain. Actors wahi pe hain. The same characters are hanging around, right? And what you and I have to do is not get seduced कि 1 साल चला, 2 साल चला, 10 साल भी stock चलता है, right? I think Yes Bank ran for Tej, how long between his license and blowing up? Yes Bank was 14 years, 14 साल. And out of the 14 साल, right? Even if you're a non-CA, you would have figured for 10 years that this doesn't make any sense. But we used to have professional fund managers telling us कि तुम बेवकूफ़ हो, तुमको समझ नहीं आता, ये बहुत बढ़िया चीज़ है. Right? Senior FIIs would tell us, Saurabh, what you do is follow the cash on Yes Bank. And I would think, यार कहाँ पे cash, क्या दिख रहा है तेरे को? मेरे को तो 0.3% NPA दिख रहा है, right? Now, let's move into the positive part, right? When did we really hit upon the thesis? The defensive part was till 2013. The kind of the constructive part started in 2013-14. Now, what happened was, and the trigger was in a way Nandan's book, right? So 2014 mein obviously Sarkar badli, but in 2009, Nandan had published this book called Imagining India. If you guys haven't read it, worth reading it. He's basically laid out the whole vision which drives our entire digital economy, right? So he explains in this book in 2009 why Aadhaar makes sense. He goes on to explain why something like, he didn't know that it would be Jan Dhan. Prime Minister Modi labelled it Jan Dhan, and the NDA government executed spectacularly on Jan Dhan. Then Jio made broadband free, and then Nandan came in with the idea of UPI. Today, UPI accounts for 45% of national income. Just imagine, right? We're one of the poorest countries in the world. We're doing $1.4 trillion of real-time financial payments between me and my chai wala, between Marcellus and its paper vendor, me and the sabji wala, right? Now, this whole joining up of India, the networking of India, right? It started hitting us in 2014, 2015, right? The Financial Times at that time asked us to write a couple of pieces. And for writing those FT pieces, we traveled around the interiors of Maharashtra. So we went into the villages and we came back realizing the country is getting joined up. So for example, the lady who cooks for us, Jayashri, I went to her house in a village around near Ratnagiri, a village 100 kilometers from Ratnagiri. And I was stunned to see बॉम्बे से दैट विलेज तक दिन में 8 बस हैं. Everybody in the village, this is 2014, everybody in the village has mobile phone. Half the village comes to work in Bombay. The other half of the village stays there and studies there. All the bachas go to school. So we said the country is changing far, far more rapidly than we are clocking. Because हम लोग बैठे बैठे ये सब नाटक में डूब रहे हैं, right? And we said we got to make money from it. Thankfully, at that time, we read The Outsiders by William Thorndike, and we realized that the smart promoter, back to the Superman, what the Superman, the smart promoter, the outsider does is, he quietly places big bets on the future of India far more smartly than the average promoter. But the outsider, the smart promoter, does not come on TV and tell you what bets he's placing. He gives you some general gyan ki capex cycle chalu hai, right? That led to the idea that we should turn this phenomenon, that the country was changing positively and smart promoters were loading up on heavy bets on the future of India from which you and I could make money. That led to the Unusual Billionaires in 2016. In a way, that's the book where the Marcellus philosophy first started getting outlined. Since Rakshit, you wrote a big part of the book, do you want to talk about Unusual Billionaires?
Sure. There's a bit of background to how the whole understanding about an unusual billionaire began. And that's where, in a way, our work on Asian Paints, which kicked off in 2012 at our previous firm, that was the starting point. So the first bit of realization was that our experience of covering some of the greatest companies in the UK, and for instance, I used to cover the insurance sector there. The best insurance companies that we identified there were actually not the usual intuitive business models, right? The usual intuitive business model for, let's say, an insurance company is the HDFC bank type smart way of lending in all types of categories and sort of great management, etc. There's something unusual which happens under the carpet at many great firms, which we learned in the UK, and that unusual piece is the disruption. To understand that disruption, you have to ask the right questions from the right people in the ecosystem. If you don't ask the right questions, you just go by the mukhota, the sort of outer lining of the business, you won't understand it. So when it was about understanding Asian Paints, after having had all that experience in the UK, the starting point was this was a company that was covered by FMCG analysts in India. The approach towards coverage of this company was brand distribution, brand distribution, brand distribution, right? How many outlets do you have? How many outlets does your competition have? Oh, wow, you have more? Then you'll sell more. Do you have your brand on TV? Well, have you hired the best celebrity? If yes, then yeah, you'll be able to sell more. Let's put a buy on you. If you haven't been doing that, no, I don't think you'll be able to generate ROC. That was the standard sort of way of looking at paint companies. When we started asking first the customers, why do you buy a particular paint, then the painter, then the dealer, and then some of the ex-employees, how did you deliver on all of these sort of requirements of the customer, the painter, the dealer, we realized this is actually a very differently built business. Right? And that realization, many of you would have heard us talk about our understanding of what made Asian Paints' business model so solid. It's not brand, it's not distribution, it's actually the supply chain, the inventory turn, which was actually quite a counterintuitive way of looking at a business. So that was the first bit. Once we did that and then we read about the outsiders, we realized that, look, this capital allocation piece of being a disruptor, changing the shape of the business, and sustaining greatness over several decades is something that maybe is behind some of the greatest businesses in India as well, right? And hence we started digging into the history of an Asian Paints, a Marico, a Page Industries, companies who at that time, back in 2013-14, had spent several decades building greatness decade after decade after decade. Competition came, tried all sorts of things, price wars, new products, marketing campaigns, etc. Nothing worked. And these businesses, they sustained their greatness like clockwork. Their sort of earnings growth rate would be in a straight line, 20-25% CAGR. Their free cash flow growth rate would be in a straight line going up. Right? And that's what sort of was the realization when we worked on the history, that there are three things that we need to understand very deeply about a business, right? The first bit is that the greatness doesn't have to be understood in just the here and now, right? Here and now being great is only the starting point of stock analysis. The greatness actually can be understood in the sustainability into the long-term future as well, right? And the fact that disruptions are very frequent, in fact, rather than that being a risk to a business, it can be a driver of greatness in the long-term future, where you pick up a business that keeps disrupting the industry decade after decade after decade. And if you can pick that sort of a business up, then there's enough longevity to that business which we can benefit from, which was the realization number 2. That when you do valuation of a business, you don't have to just look at the next 5 years. You don't have to look at just the next 3 years, right? The standard way of doing analysis, and we used to be the standard stock analyst at some time prior to that.
P multiple likhte the hum, P multiple.
Yeah, the standard way of doing the analysis was look at competitors' PE, look at this company's PE. This company trades at 30% premium to competition. It's overvalued, sell. It's as simple as that. Or if some client pushes you to use a deeper concept called DCF, then what do? You say, okay, fine, I'll use a DCF. I'm forecasting for 5 years, then a slide to disruption and a terminal growth rate of whatever, 4-5%. The fair value of this business is 30 times PE. Right? Now, interestingly, that depth of DCF will actually give you a 25 to 30 times PE on pretty much every company which is good in the current times, right? Every company making 30%, 40% ROC, you'll get 30, 40 times as the max fair value PE, right? And hence, the standard note that it's trading at 40 overvalued, 20 undervalued, right? What we realized was the biggest part of undervaluation in a great business is the appreciation of longevity of that franchise. So that was the second realization, which we, in a way, weaved into the book by trying to connect dots of why longevity exists in various companies. And the third type of realization was, if you're actually an investor building a portfolio, there's something called power of compounding, which you can feel right in front of you by investing in great businesses.
Can I just use an anecdote to highlight this?
Yeah.
So ये वाला point, right? This is the kind of spine-tingling moment at which हमारी जिंदगी बदली. So when we were writing this book, हमने एक simple सा crunch किया. The crunch is in the book. The crunch is also in Coffee Can Investing. The crunch was ridiculously simple, and it changed our lives. We said that suppose all of us were sitting in this room in August 2000. ठीक है, August 2000 में इस कमरे में बैठे हैं. We can look at results from 91 to 2000. 10 साल के results उपलब्ध हैं. We said let's look for companies who between 91 to 2000 have delivered return on capital above 15% and revenue growth above 10% हर साल. ठीक है, simple सा criteria है. And in August 2000 we said here's a list of I think 6 or 7 companies between 91 to 2000. 6 कंपनी ने लगातार 10 साल double digit rev growth and ROCE above 15 किया था. So we said suppose we ran a equal weighted portfolio, right? So this is the mental exercise we did. Suppose we ran an equal weighted portfolio, कितना कमाते? I think the answer came to something like 26% CAGR. So we said maybe August 2000, 91 to 2000 शायद कोई बढ़िया साल रहा होगा. 2000 we are buying at the bottom of the .com bust, इसलिए कमाया. So we said suppose we sat in this room in August 2001 and we did 92 to 2001. Same crunch, 10 years of 10% ROCE rev growth. कितना कमाते? And the answer came to 23, 24. Suppose we did that in August 2002, August 2003, August 2004. So in 2015 we realized it pretty much doesn't matter which year you sit in August and do the 10-year backward looking crunch. Simple, right? We're not even using a brain. All we are doing is businesses with return on capital above 15 and double digit revenue growth. You'll see the crunch in Unusual Billionaires. And the answer was you'd make 24, 25 comfortably, right? अगर आप ये करते रहो. So initially I thought कोई गलती है यार, ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? Markets are efficient, no? Markets are supposed to be efficient. थोड़ी ना 25% you should be earning. So I told my colleagues, यार गलती कर दिया, you screwed up, do it again. They went back, they did it again, and they said नहीं ऐसे ही बनता है. And that's when, right? I'm trying to give you a sense of real time. That's when I realized, oh my God, markets are seriously inefficient. You just have to train yourself to pick up the inefficiency rather than what Rakshit and I and all of us used to do. PE multiple देखो क्या सस्ता है वो देखो और promoter को face value में लो and sell the Clark Kent because the Clark Kent looks like a office worker, right? अब Clark Kent पे PE multiple क्यों लगाते हो? अब Clark Kent से पूछते तुम्हारी CTC क्या है? ज़्यादा CTC मांगता है, you send Clark Kent home, no? Because इसे side वाला journalist तो सस्ते में काम कर रहा है, right? So 2015, the crunch for this book helped us understand not only that longevity है, if you and I can train our minds to pick up the longevity, avoid the crook remember overvalued, the Superman, the monopolist, the longevity wala dude, undervalued. If we can train our minds, we will make a lot of money in India. For you, for us, for our families, जिंदगी में पैसे की कोई कमी नहीं होगी, right? And that's in a way the point at which life pivoted for us, right? And एक दिन शाम को मैं Friday desk वापस आया. This is in our erstwhile job, and ये वाली किताब 0 to 1 was on my desk. Mr. Gubbi had left 0 to 1 on my desk with a little post-it saying you might want to read this book over the weekend. I read the book on Friday evening itself, and Saturday morning I woke up saying कुछ करना पड़ेगा क्योंकि समझ आ गया Unusual Billionaires में 10 साल में 10 गुना. Peter Thiel told us that if you have a concept, if you're able to understand the secret, if you read 0 to 1, back to Rakshit ka point again, what does the monopolist do? The monopolist has a secret which he does not want to share with you, right? Murli Divi has a secret, I guarantee you, which he will not share with you. He does not care whether you buy his share or I buy his share. He will not share his secret with you. So Peter Thiel says that is the definition of a dominant franchise. He or she has a secret around which the franchise gets built. In a way, we are sharing with you through these books the secret. 0 to 1 led to us saying kuch karna padega. Alongside that, in 2015, in our erstwhile avatar, I had written a note saying, us folks, wealthy people like us, have 95% of our wealth in physical assets. This is RBI data, right? 2015 में हमने नोट लिखा कि RBI के डेटा के मुताबिक people like us have 95% of our wealth in physical assets, मतलब real estate and gold. And we said even if you do basic maths, this physical asset से कुछ पैसा नहीं बनेगा above the rate of inflation. अब जितने भी फ्लैट खरीदते रहो, जितना भी सोना खरीदते रहो, you're not going to beat the rate of inflation, right? And as you and I age, in that 2015 note, we said as you and I age, we will realize that we cannot fund our retirement by flats in Panvel or wherever, Sarjapur or Salt Lake or Noida, or with bars of gold. Bars of gold से retirement थोड़ी ना fund करोगे. You won't take bars of gold to the supermarket and say मेरे को अंडा दो, right? So we said there's going to be a massive wave of financialization in 2015. So financialization का समझ आ गया. 2015 Bombay real estate was still booming. Whoever used to meet, suppose you met somebody in Hotel Orchid in 2015, you ask him किस में पैसा लगा रहे, they would say अभी लोअर परेल में 6 फ्लैट ले लिया हमने. And you'd think, yaar, what's wrong with me? Why am I buying Asian Paints, whereas this dude is buying 6 flats in Lower Parel? Then you later realize there was nothing wrong with you. There was something wrong with the guy because he was doing 10-year look back, right? So coming back to the confluence of events coming together, us figuring out monopoly compounding, 10 साल में 10 गुना, us figuring out how to avoid the crony capitalist, चोर को कैसे avoid करें, us figuring out that all of us and our friends and our families have no choice. We cannot afford to have the bulk of our wealth, as we currently do, as I suspect most of you currently do, in physical assets. It's going to wreck us, absolutely wreck us, because even if you assume, let's take someone like me, I will retire at 60. People in my demographic, people like you, most of us will survive till 85. That's 25 years of retirement. If I have a portfolio, which is the RBI representation of the country, which is 95% physical, my portfolio will compound at 7% gross of tax, net of tax at 5. I guarantee you, your and my cost of living grows at close to 10. Every year, my wealth will shrink at 5%. Long before I die, I will be bankrupt. Long before I die, I will be bankrupt. And we figured out, and this is when we were writing Coffee Can Investing in 2018, we said, done hai boss, we don't even have to sell to you. Nobody has to sell to you. You will come to people like us, because you will realize buying flats and buying gold is an unmitigated disaster for you in the long run. And thus, Marcellus was born, right? I won't go into the books. Now, one way to understand what's happened in our country, right, in one chart, because I've taken you through a bunch of charts, one way to understand what's happened in our countries is this chart. What we have done here is taken 10-year cycles, right? So, for example, when you see this 70%, when you see the 70%, what this 70% basically means is that in the 10 years ending 2012, 70% of the stocks in the Sensex outperformed the Sensex. Okay? In the 10 years ending 2012, 70% of the stocks in the Sensex outperformed the Sensex, right? So let me give you a quick analogy, right? I went to a school in Delhi. There were 50 of us in the class. 40 people didn't study. 10 of us studied very hard, right? So 10 of us dragged up the average mark of the class. Okay? But if you went to a school thinking that, say, on average, Saurabh's class gets scores of 90% and above, right? That would be true, but that didn't mean half the class was getting above 90. Because only 10 people were studying in the class, we were dragging up the class average. 40 out of 50 students in the class were actually getting below the average, right? So back in 2012, 70% of the market was actually beating 70% of the Sensex was beating the Sensex, right? And if you see the whole era, basically, let's call it the UPA era, it was pretty similar, right? 60-70 chal raha tha. This was in effect this, right? If everybody who does setting ends up running the show, right, then obviously the market ends up, the bulk of the benchmark ends up becoming setting, right? The last 10 years, the 10 years that we've lived through, the 10 years ending 22, look at the data. In the 10 years ending 2022, only a quarter of the benchmark beats the benchmark. This is the class I'm talking about. Only 20% of the people in my class in Delhi, beat the average mark of the class, right? In the market's case, it's 27. As night follows day, ये और नीचे जाएगा. ये 27 will become 20. So, लगता है पूरा निफ्टी है, सेंसेक्स है, BSE 500 है. A small minority of the companies in the market are making all the money, right? So if you want me to put it in another way, the Indian stock market cap is around 3 trillion. In the last 10 years, we've added 2 trillion. 10 साल पहले 1 trillion था, अभी 3 trillion हो गया है. That 3 trillion, 80% of it has come from 15 companies. Just 15 companies have driven 80% of the wealth creation in India over the last 10 years. In the 10 years prior to that, the decade in which we rocked up in India, 26 companies drove 80% of the wealth creation in the market. 26, 2000 to 2010, 2010 to 20, just 15 companies. Right? Why is this happening? Because as you would have heard us say, country jud raha hai, UPI, GST, telecom, the airports, the pentupling. As the country joins up, fewer and fewer companies can do an Asian Paints or a Pidilite or an HDFC Bank or a Bajaj Finance. And that is the nature of the game we are playing here, right? Be under no illusion. If you back promoters who don't have a track record of delivering, or we back promoters who don't have a track record of delivering, it is highly unlikely you will make money. Because it's becoming a super competitive economy, right? Let me put it another way. I'm an amateur cricket player. हमारे building के cricket matches में I can get by because the others are also just as amateurish as me, right? But if you take me from a building cricket match and put me in an IPL match, obviously first ball, my middle stump will be blown away because my weaknesses will be made apparent at an elite level. The Indian stock market a decade back is like our building ka cricket match. Amateurs can get away, right? This setting, right? Building ka cricket match. The Indian economy today is increasingly like the IPL. If you don't have elite competence, don't even think about it as a promoter. And as an investor, if you're investing in companies without elite competence, life will be tough. So that's the backstory. We thought we should share it with you because you are amongst the people who backed us in our earliest and most formative years in Marcellus. I'll request Rakshit to take it from here and take you through the portfolio and results. Thank you.